What up, guys? It's Dustbox, and today we got another video. But today's video is going to be a little bit different. This is a little bit more unique because today it's actually with a art gallery that I found online. Yeah, so it's actually with this art gallery. They're called Y2K Aesthetic Gallery on Instagram. They post a lot of like Y2K style of like photos and stuff, like that very bubbly, very colorful, very washed out kind of thing. They've been doing it for quite some time, and it came up across my For You page, and I decided to like go reach out to them and like talk to them. We decided to chat about it, and then they were interested in an interview. So I started off. I was like, "Hey Y2K, I'm Dustbox, and I conduct interviews with people that catch my attention." And then I also recently found this page. I just wanted to ask, what separates real Y2K design from what people are creating today? Like what makes something feel genuinely like Y2K to you, like of that specific era? So he responds, so they respond, first off, what most people today refer to as Y2K simply has nothing to do with Y2K futurism. And they use it to describe 2000s inspired fashion that sometimes isn't even accurate to the things that people wore in the 2000s. Most oftenly, it incorrectly used to describe the McBling aesthetic on mainstream platforms like TikTok. The actual revival of 2000s futurism, neo Y2K, is a relatively small and niche movement with little to no mainstream coverage. But sometimes artists in that specific field fail to faithfully and accurate capture the spirit of the aesthetic. For example, I've seen some modern works in the metal heart subgenre, abstract, high tech, and alien looking 3D shard like objects, combined with things like grids and futuristic fonts that too obviously give away that they were made in the modern image of what Y2K was supposed to look like. And it was used with like modern images of like editing tools, CGI programs, probably like modern Photoshop as well. There's a lot of different plays into here. This affects the art style heavily because the way that everything shines, glows, reflects tells us that it was made in the latest versions of Photoshop and Blender. So I respond with, "Wow, that's really cool. The Y2K movement may be niche right now, but it's definitely getting some mainstream attention. I think it's starting to get really mainstream in my personal opinion, but there's like a huge difference between like the nostalgic Y2K that we are going through right now versus the actual Y2K movement that was going on like 20ish years ago or 30 at this point. So Y2K is like it takes away from the charm a bit. It simply makes things feel like really like polished. I think more people need to learn to use older software like Bryce 3D to really recreate the magic of late 90s to 2000s digital art. And I kind of agree here. Like I think if you're trying to get into like a very specific niche of like photo editing, video editing, and you want to make it really period correct with like the editing, the style of imagery, the whatever, I think you got to use the softwares that they were using back then. You know, because if you're using the softwares that we're using today, it's too new, it's too clean, it's too perfect. Like you're not gonna get that real feeling from like the photos that you would like see from like 20, 30 years ago. There's also the term cybercore, which is basically gentrified, much less consistent design wise of TikTok version of Y2K futurism, which also throws in a lot of anime aesthetics and low poly graphics in it. Anime doesn't even have anything remotely to do with the original design style. So, are there currently trending PS1 graphics which were already being replaced by higher definitions ones during the turn of the millennium? However, I know some incredible neo Y2K artists who really hit the nail on the head with the aesthetic. For example, one of my mutual followers, STP TV, creates some absolutely insane CGI animations inspired by early 2000s TV channel bumpers, especially from Bryce 3D landscapes and fonts to music choices that's perfectly period correct. And I feel like that makes sense, you know, because like I feel like you got to pick a song that matches like the vibe of the aesthetic perfectly. Like you can't just throw a song on that like doesn't necessarily like fit the vibe. You know what I mean? Like everything kind of has to play in together. And like if it doesn't, like it then it just doesn't. You know what I mean? So Y2K goes on to say there's also Terrell Davis who unfortunately passed away in 2020. He is one of the pioneers of that neo Y2K movement and designed clothes and accessories that look straight out of the year 2000. It's a shame that we lost this very promising, talented artist. That's how I think it's done the right way. So Y2K is just mentioning like okay, like neo Y2K futurism, like the new wave. Like there's a lot of like bad ways to do it. There's a lot of good ways to do it. Like he mentions Terrell Davis, who did it in a more tasteful way. So I respond with, that is really cool to hear. As a casual enjoyer of the Y2K aesthetic, it is such a new realm for me to differentiate between the old Y2K aesthetic and the new like TikTok gentrified style of like the Y2K that we see online. So I go on to ask him, like, so when you curate your page, what is your instinct or your gut feeling with the content that you have that makes you feel like it belongs on your page? And also, when it comes to posting online, do you tend to lean into the TikTok style of the Y2K or the more older original style of the Y2K? I'm just basically asking, like, is your main like kind of target or focus of your page, like of your archive, like, are you leaning towards like that new style of trendy Y2K or like that more old school late 2000, sorry, early 2000s, late 90s Y2K? So Y2K goes on to say, I always post the original styles of Y2K. Most of the time, when I find something on the internet that catches my eye, most of the time it's like interiors, like retail spaces and like offices. I make sure it fits in one of the subgenres of Y2K. Since discovering things that fit into the purest form of Y2K futurism with the chrome plated, spacey biomorphic design is a pretty rare case. I mostly find and post like that Gen X soft club, like a tamer, like kind of like a less flashy subgenre of like Y2K. However, this has led to me sometimes posting stuff that I, when looking back at it, saw as not so truly futuristic or like worthy to post. Lately, I've been running out of good ideas and discoveries to post, which has led to me having a bit of a burnout with a few days long gaps between posts. But every time I found something truly 100% Y2K, I am very proud of it. Like, I once discovered some Czech computer store from 2001, which was brightly lit by blue neons and had futuristic design elements all around. And it was one of such examples. So I go on to respond with Gen X Soft Club has been a huge push for the Y2K TikTok movement lately. It's how I personally discovered the new Y2K aesthetic. Burnouts are pretty common, especially if you're in the arts, and I believe it's important to revisit what inspires your vision in the beginning in order to feel what made you begin your brand. I have personally experienced that, and I know how it feels. And many who will view this video will also relate to some extent, because I mean, generally the people who do view my videos are some sort of artists, whether they're video designers, graphic designers, whatever, like music producers, rappers, singers, whatever. Like everybody experiences burnout. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it's just so normal, and I think you kind of have to just like ride that wave. I feel like people try to fight it. I think that's wrong. You know, like I understand like you're trying to like be productive and push more content out. But I mean, at the end of the day, just do the things that you feel like represents your brand the best. And at the end of the day, if you're burnt out and you don't want to do it, you're just not gonna have your brand's best interest in posting or whatever. So I go on to ask Y2K. So building on those ideas, how do you think Y2K currently is it like aesthetics, like nostalgia, or do you believe it's like something else? So they respond, on the surface, the reason the newer generation is getting interested in older aesthetics and designs is mostly rooted in nostalgia, with 2000s becoming the new nostalgic decade romanticized in social media. But when you really look into it, there are way deeper reasons for it. The rise of minimalism and corporate Memphis designs from 2013 onwards, the rampant oversimplification, the recent push for ads and AI in every tech and every corner of the internet. We entered late stage capitalism where major companies don't need to put out good products and good designs to satisfy the customers anymore. People will still buy it. The older aesthetics are like an escape from the gray minimalist reality, and revivals of these styles of like neo Y2K are a way to subtly resist against it. I think the 2020s may be the start of demise of oversimplification and minimalism, with the majority disliking it more and more. Now, to some level, I kind of agree, you know, because I feel like every single brand now out like is so they're so clean and like minimalist and stuff. Like it kind of lost like the meaning of like a brand, you know, because they're trying to appeal to so many people to the point where like if you're a friend to all, you're a friend to none. You know, like you got Like I feel like you gotta have some sort of like core. You know what I mean? And like whenever I see like these like super minimalist brands who are just like selling stuff to like basically everyone, it just feels like hollow and empty. You know? Like that's just what I personally think. So I respond with yes, as a personal dislike of corporate minimalism, seeing the new rise in these different aesthetics is very refreshing as a viewer. The rise of AI is very detrimental and very much interrupting the industry. So like the AI question comes up all the time, like, oh, how is AI going to affect your industry? And like in complete honesty, I don't think it's going to affect it that much. If I'm being completely honest, and hear me out, AI can only recreate what was already made, right? Like it's like if I make a song and I feed it into the system, like it's going to recreate that song. You know, like it's never going to create something out of the ordinary. It's not going to be innovative. Like AI is like the opposite of innovation. Like you need humans to innovate, in my opinion. Like what AI does is it makes certain things faster. You know what I mean? Like it makes like I can type in like generate me a like country song. And it's going to take like 10 country songs, merge them into one. And like it sounds pretty bad in my personal opinion. But you'll see it, you know what I mean? And like innovation, like you need a human behind that. At least in my humble opinion. I think you do. Because like you can't pay for that. Like there's not enough money in the world that you can have that will like not where you can pay someone else to innovate for you. Like you need to do it yourself. So when I asked them about AI, they're like, "Yeah, I'm not worried about that. AI could never compete with the real art made by humans," which I also agree with, like what I mentioned. And I said that's a fair thing to say. At the end of the day, everything generated by AI is just a remnants of what humans generated in the first place. So I go on to say, so branching into your drive towards your aesthetic, what originally pulled you into this aesthetic, and what made you decide to start sharing content relating to it rather than just consuming it? So they respond with the thing that led me getting into Y2K futurism was randomly getting recommended a YouTube video about the Fruitiger Arrow aesthetic, right at the time of the beginning of its mainstream popularity. I remember thinking it was really cool and some of the imagery seemed familiar to me, and it made me pay attention to the replacement of cool design with minimalism. There was a brief mention of Y2K aesthetic in it, however, I didn't really pay much attention to it at the time. After I was hugely into the Fruitiger after I was hugely into Fruitiger for some time, but at some point it started to get oversaturated by AI generated images and low effort profiles posting the same exact things as all the other profiles, including AI photos. It overshadowed the real examples of the design, finding which became harder. At the same time, I discovered Y2K Aesthetic Institute, an archive based on Tumblr and Twitter, and it's been running since 2014. The content that it posted was incredible. It amazed me and shaped my taste for design. He goes on to say that its main curator, Evan Collins, apparently has a huge collection of obscure old architecture and design books where they find and scan things from which would get posted in the Institute. He made me have an urge to find and buy some random 2000s architecture book and find spaces with Y2K design that were never found and posted before. However, I still can't find such a book. I still bought one book that other profiles scanned stuff from, like Eat, Work, Shop, New Japanese Design from 2004. And surprisingly, I actually found some interiors which were never on the internet before. I am still in process of scanning everything Y2K from it. There was also like Y2K Lives Forever, a smaller blog ran by an artist and a mutual follower, Daffodil. I was in love with how it felt, looked, and the song selections. It really highlighted that utopian, optimistic, humanist nature of the Y2K aesthetic. He goes on to say, I realized that true Y2K aesthetic was basically untouched by mainstream and it had zero AI slop. It quickly became my all time favorite over Fruitiger Arrow. I still think my own archive may be not nearly as good as the Y2K Aesthetic Institute because they straight up had no misses. Every post was a banger. Unlike mine, it was almost entirely that like 100% pure Y2K. And I mean, like at that point, it's like I kind of feel that because it's like you're your own biggest critic. You know, like you like at the end of the day, like as a someone who does music, I'm like, dude, I get like really weird about like my own music. I'm like everything sucks, but like I don't know, like I'll talk to like other producers and stuff like, yeah, like I hate that song, and I'm like, dude, I love that song. What are you talking? You know what I mean? It's just like I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. So I go on and respond. There's a lot of pages, especially on Tumblr, that have posted about the fruitager aesthetic for a while. The AI generated pages are starting to saturate the genre of many different aesthetics, and not just the fruitager era stuff. And it's really unfortunate to see. There are many obscure references, like you mentioned, regarding like Evan Collins and his references to his architecture, which helped inspire the vision. Books from the era are fantastic references for the image and brand, which I like again, like if you're trying to like really hone in on that Y2K aesthetic, you kind of have to derive things from the early 2000s to late 90s to really accurately depict that genre and that aesthetic. So I go on to ask the archive. So beyond running your archive page, what is something you're building toward with your page creatively or in general? So they go on to say, my profile won't be purely an archive forever, obviously. I will not be quitting anytime soon. He goes on to say, my profile won't be purely an archive forever. And obviously, I will not be quitting anytime soon. I'll still always be posting my discoverings when I find something. But I'm planning to gradually convert this page into my own profile in the future and introduce more personal elements and content. I built my platform and got all my fans and my viewers off archiving Y2K, going from like around 10-ish followers and little likes in 2024 to over 10,000 followers in 2026. Thanks for everyone that supported me through all this time, and now I'm starting to get ready and creating my own art. I want to actually leave my mark on something and make a name for myself rather than doing the same thing without change. My goal is to become a music artist. I think to some it won't be a surprise that I'm into electronic music since I had always put both old and modern obscure tracks as audios in my posts. In winter of 2025, I started my music project Singlebound. I released my debut single Enchanted Waters on SoundCloud. Since then, it's the first time I ever created music. It's a pretty janky, atmospheric drum and bass track that's too long and and messily produced. I was creating it in a rush to release before the new year while learning FL Studio functions on the fly. There is also an alternate mix because I wanted to create something else before 2026 and didn't have time to make a standalone new track. So I hastily put together a mix in a different style. It's also not that interesting. However, while creating it, I learned how to structure tracks and the basics of production, and I plan on releasing actual quality music in the future. Right now, I'm working on a debut 4-track EP. Two of the tracks are completed. It's going to be mostly outsider house with futuristic vibes. I already created the opening title track, and I'm really proud of the way it sounds. It's going to be a banger, which as you should, like it should be a banger. You can't release garbage, you know what I mean? Like it should be a banger. Everything you put out has to be like good, you know, like it has to represent your brand. It has to be good. He goes on to say, of course it's really bare bones yet since I had just started creating music and don't have a discography. However, what I plan on doing with Signalbound is making electronic inspired by various genres from the Y2K era, where when I'll learn creating digital art, it will have neo Y2K style cover artworks. In the future, I really want to create a project replicating the sound and the feel of the 90s to early 2000s era. Like that futuristic chill out electronica, like IDM, ambient techno, ambient trance, atmospheric DNB, progressive breaks, Sybian, etc. Like I would enjoy making a pastiche of the stuff from the Y2K era. So I go on to respond. Making the jump into music is a great way to expand your brand. Considering a huge chunk of the Y2K movement was based around music trending from the time. I'm excited to see where Signalbound takes you. Music will definitely help your viewers feel more connected to your posts. So finally, I ask, outside of the Y2K movement, what other interests or influences are shaping the taste and where you want to go next? So they respond with, I have a very big amount of influences and I'm quite ambitious on what I'll be doing in the future. Besides producing music, I'm planning to take up DJing as a creative outlet for the sheer amount of tracks that I know. maybe even starting this spring. When I get more known, I'll be doing signal bound live shows in a few years. Since 2025, I've been spending a lot of time on the website Rate Your Music, which really expanded my taste and made me discover and get inspired by dozens of underrated artists and releases. My profile is standard 5200 on there. If any of my viewers are on the website too, you can go check it out. I listen to so much completely stylistically contrasting stuff, ranging from 90s to modern underground, from all different corners in the spectrum of electronic music, that some might even say, how are you into these two at the same time? Since I'm only just starting out with my career and I really didn't really release anything yet, right now I can't express all of my different influences in my own music. However, I definitely know some people that will heavily impact my art. One of the first artists whose music I hugely got into was Cult Member. I remember listening to You Weren't Here, I Really Miss You for the first time after hearing it briefly on Instagram, and it absolutely blew my mind. It sounded so incredibly 2000s and Y2K. He captured the sound and feeling of trance hits from that era so well that it was insane. My personal, like, 10 out of 10. Then I basically listened to all of his albums, singles, and EPs, even the unreleased leaks. It was all amazing. The discography spans many genres like house, trance, electroclash, future garage, and ambient techno. But it's all done in his like really recognizable signature style. His music has some of the best use of lo-fi I've ever heard. The tracks sound like they were recorded off some cheap CD player in 2004, which really adds to that like ethereal nostalgic feeling. Listening to it, it makes me think of like 2000s club music, but the thing is, I can't find anything released in 2000s that sounds like Cult Member. He's somehow like really entirely unique. Adding on to that, actually, it's because we're using modern software for the most part. Like I don't know what Cult Member's using, but generally speaking, even like those Y2K inspired artists are all using modern software to create older music. Older musicians use maybe the same software but older versions of it. That's why you get like these different styles of music. So it's just kind of like that's kind of the main differentiation between the two of them. Anyway, going on. I don't plan on making lo-fi music myself. I prefer HQ more. However, I really hope to create a similar synthy, futuristic, atmospheric style of in my own music. Another one of my biggest current artists or influences is James Ferraro, an experimental artist who has worked with a very wide variety of genres in his releases, some of which I didn't really care about, but his Silica Gel mixtape from 2012 is some of the most one of a kind, avant garde music projects that I have ever listened to in my life. It's an experimental cloud rap mixtape with an absolute god level production. Like, seriously, I'm yet to find any other hip hop project that scratches the same itch as this one. It's genuinely cutting edge and boundary pushing. It's hard to explain exactly how it sounds and what makes it so good. It's better to go listen to it yourself. It's a masterpiece. I even went to the point of analyzing the production techniques used in every track to try and create beats in this style in the future. It has single handedly made me want to create a rap project. It's not the only great thing James has ever created. I also enjoyed a lot of his other works in a similar vein, especially the deleted singles and EPs. There are also relatively obscure and interesting. There's also a relatively obscure and interesting music scene that I'm really interested in right now. The early 2010s scene based around the genre of deconstructed club. Well, to explain what that is, imagine like popular genres of electronic dance music, but with weird industrial noises, shattering glass, like circular saws, drills, like off-putting samples and metallic percussion, pioneered by internet-based artists like Jam City, Chino Amobi, YB, Alicia Crampton, etc. And I think it would be really fun to produce tracks in this genre. There's a possibility that after the release of my debut EP, I'll definitely try and make a deconstructed club EP. There are just a few examples from my list of influences. It would take forever to talk about them all. If anybody wants to know more about my music taste, you can visit my Rate Your Music page I mentioned before. I got most of them rated there. Honestly, looks like I went a little too far away from the original topic of Y2K aesthetic, but I think everybody got the point that I strive to become an artist rather than just an archiver. I'll be trying out a lot of things, both related to the Y2K futurism revival as a part of the neo Y2K scene and projects outside of it. Now I respond with DJing is a great way to expand your base as a music artist. Having a good range of music is so important, especially if you want to get into music. Having a music taste doesn't really exist, right? Like you have to always be ahead of the curve. And like Cult Member is also a huge influence to many people in the scene alongside many other artists who incorporate some of those like Y2K influences. James Ferraro is also an influence to some. He has his own unique style. Like obscurity is really what defines the Y2K genre, and I think that's what gives it its like swag and its pull. There's a huge amount of overlap between artistry and archiving, and at the end of the day, you're curating whether it be a photo art gallery or sound. So that's basically the end of the interview. I go on to say thank you so much for your time. I feel like this interview has given me, and as well as the viewer, a very much in-depth analysis on your drives, archiving styles, and future endeavors, especially with music. You know, like it's kind of cool to see like people who take like this really specific niche thing, like for example the Y2K style, and really, really deep dive into it and create something that no one really has done before, or they have, but they just curated it in a different way. And like it's really cool to see it, me as a music producer, like kind of tap into the different art styles of different arts. You know, like you gain respect of like different arts as a music producer because there's a lot of overlap between the two, and at the end of the day, like without one the other wouldn't exist, right? You know, that's why he's creating like music, you know, like that's why he started his music project, and that's why I'm doing video editing and photos and stuff. Like at the end of the day, like when you know how to do one, you got to do all, right? Like especially if you want to really expand what you're doing and really be good at what you're doing, you have to have a foot and an understanding of everything. And if you really hone in, like for example, with Y2K Aesthetic Gallery, they're really focused on that Y2K aesthetic, which kind of makes things a lot more like centered and focused, right? Whereas a lot of other people won't have a very specific style in mention, you know. And that's what attracted me to his page to begin with, and that's what attracted me to their page to begin with. And it was a great chat. I look forward to talking to them again. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, all the BS that all the other YouTubers say at the end of the video. So yeah, thank you guys again for watching. I hope you guys learn more about the Y2K movement and different styles of music and influences.